Taming of the Shrew.
Taming of the Shrew.
Taming of the Shrew!
By William Shakespeare.
Taming of the Shrew was one of the plays written by Shakespeare, the most well-known playwright in history. Shakespeare wrote many plays that were written before the 1600s, some of which include Titus Andronicus, The Comedy of Errors, The Two Gentlemen of Verona, and several other plays. These plays that were written before the 1600s included themes such as comedy and history, while the plays he wrote after the 1600s had themes such as tragedy and tragicomedy. While there are no official records of Shakespeare's personal life, it is presumed that he was born on April 23, 1564, due to him being baptized at Holy Trinity Church at Stratford-upon Avon, April 26, 1564. Shakespeare was the third child of John Shakespeare and Mary Arden. He had two older sisters and three younger brothers. Shakespeare married Anne Hathaway November 28, 1582, when William was 18 and Anne was 26 and pregnant. That would lead to them having their first daughter and later having a set of twins, one of which would come to die of unknown causes at the age of 11. Shakespeare's main source of income during his life was being a playwright and an actor in London. History says that Shakespeare died in 1823, 1616. However, there is some evidence that goes against this, leading scholars to question if this was actually the date that he died.
Hello. Women like Catherine were called shrews and were looked down upon as the worst kind of women. A play focusing on the concerns of married life would have seemed particularly relevant to English audiences in the Renaissance period. Theirs was a society concerned with marriage in general, thanks to part of Henry VIII's separation of England from the Catholic Church in 1534 in order to secure a divorce that the Pope had refused to grant him. Of particular worry to the society were shrews, or scolds, that is, cantankerous or gossipy wives who resisted or undermined the assumed authority of the husband within a marriage. A large number of sermons, plays, and pamphlets of the time address related topics,
Chloe, look at me.
the taming of the shrews, and by their husbands, or the public punishments of scold, for example, repeatedly dunking them in a river. Part of this body of literature took a very diplomatic attitude toward women, although much of it was extremely misogynistic. In some of this literature, it is difficult to distinguish between behavior that is parodied and behavior that is presented as an ideal. This ambiguity may also be found in The Taming of the Shrew, which manages to lampoon chauvinistic behavior, which simultaneously reaffirming its social validity. The play celebrates the quick wit, and fiery spirit of its heroine, even while reveling in her humiliation.
Oh hey, didn't see you there. So, Taming of the Shrew, right? Well, it's a frame story. So at the very beginning, there's this drunk guy, and he's in front of a bar, and this lord comes out and says, I think we could play a pretty good practical joke here. So he tells the servants to take the drunk guy to his house and treat him like a lord. So this drunk guy wakes up and he thinks he's a lord because he has all these nice things and clothes and whatever. And so as he's pretending to be a lord, they have this troupe of play people come and present the Taming of the Shrew to him. So then the Taming of the Shrew begins. And that story begins with Lucentio, who is a young university student who just came to Padua from his home. And so he has this servant named Shrew. And so the very first, he comes into Padua, and the first people he meets Baptista, who is a wealthy merchant, who has two daughters. Catherine, who is the older daughter, who is the shrew of the Taming of the Shrew. She's very strong-willed and opinionated. And also her younger sister, Bianca, who is sweet, and everyone loves her, and she has like 3 different suitors, and they have different names. So the first is Hortensio, and Grumio, and they're both competing for Bianca's hand. So Baptista, their father, sets down this rule, and he says, no one can court Bianca until Catherine's married, because there's just too many suitors and it's complicated. So Grumio and Hortensio, who both want Bianca, say, well, okay, let's find a guy for Catherine to marry, which is going to be hard because no one likes Catherine very much. So Hortensio is friends with this guy named Petruchio, and his father just died, and so he really needs some cash. And because Baptista's so wealthy, Catherine has a really big dowry, so that's why Petruchio is all on board the Catherine train. So, what's next? Oh, okay. So Lucentio, back to Lucentio. He sees Bianca and falls instantly, madly, hopelessly in love. And so he hears that Bianca is looking for a tutor, because he's going to college and all. So he switches places with his servant, Trino, who's going to pretend to be Lucentio, so that he can go undercover as Cumio, who is going to be the tutor for Bianca. And they translate things, and he tells her they read love stories and things like that, so they're totally falling in love. And Hortensio is also going undercover as another tutor, and so there are two tutors competing for Bianca. But then whenever Hortensio sees that Bianca is falling in love with Cumio / Lucentio, he loses interest and marries a widow, then gives up. So anyways, the very first time that Petruchio meets Catherine, he says, "We're getting married on Sunday." And Catherine's like, "Heck no," but that's what happens anyways. So it's their wedding day, right? And Catherine's there waiting, and Petruchio isn't there. And she's like, "Wow, what even?" So she starts crying, and then Petruchio shows up wearing this ridiculous outfit and like all of this. Yes, so then they get married, and it's a ridiculous wedding, and he's drunk the whole time. And so then they go to Petruchio's house, and he's trying to break Kate's will, and so he doesn't give her food. Ow, and then he gives her these nice clothes, but then says they look hideous. And so then Kate is finally submissive to Petruchio, but at that point, Lucentio and Bianca have eloped, and so Baptista, Kate's father, is hosting a wedding banquet for both of his daughters who are now happily married. Catherine and Petruchio are on their way to the wedding banquet, and Petruchio says things like, "Say the sun is the moon, and say the widow is a man." And at this point, Kate's so hungry and done with everything that she's like, "Sure, I'll say that." So they get to the wedding banquet, and Bianca's there with Lucentio, and they get into a fight with the widow who's married to Hortensio, and they storm off. They all leave. Petruchio is talking to Hortensio and Lucentio, and they have this bet because Lucentio and Hortensio start talking trash about Kate and how disobedient she is. And so Petruchio says, "Hey, I bet she'll come if I call for her." And Lucentio and Hortensio say, "Yeah, fat chance." So he calls for Kate, and Lucentio calls for Bianca, and Bianca actually doesn't come, but Kate shows up, and the other two brides don't, and everyone's just astounded. And so then Kate gives this wonderful speech about what it really means to be a wife, and then it's over. So that's the end of the Taming of the Shrew.
This quote exemplifies how Petruchio truly feels about Catherine, how he's only married her for her looks and her money. Catherine knows this and marries him to prove that women are more than just complicit and obedient people.
People who read Taming of the Shrew are actually split into two camps over why this book was written. The first group of people mainly analyze the brutal and sexist relationship between Kate and Petruchio. The people that think this make a comparison between the relationship and that of a lion and its tamer, who will go through any means that he has to in order to make the lion bend to his will. Petruchio did this by starving Kate, making her sleep deprived, and canceling their trip so that she would learn not to oppose and defy him. This leads to people's sexist views on the book, with Petruchio forcing Kate to learn that a wife should obey and agree to her husband without questions, and making him the winner at the end of the play. The other group, however, just believes that the reason Shakespeare wrote this was to write about society at the time and explain how twisted it was. They believe he did this by writing about men who want to marry for status and looks instead of actually falling in love with each other. Then he used the marriage between Kate and Petruchio to express how many men thought of themselves as superior in their marriage, and that their wives should listen to them for all of the hard work that their husband goes through for them.
It's time for the question of the day! Oh my god. What techniques does Petruchio employ to tame Catherine? Well, he starves her, he manipulates her, he abandons her, he doesn't let her sleep, and this ends up making her have to listen to him because it's her only option if she wants to survive. Next question. Why do they work? Is Petruchio's manipulation of Kate plausible? No. Manipulation is wrong. I don't care what you say about that. Him acting as if he's above Kate was disgusting, and Kate did what she could so that she could survive, because in those terrible situations of being manipulated and starved to death and tormented.
So the Taming of the Shrew has lots of instances of imagery, and the first instance occurs when Petruchio is praising Kate for her beauty. He says, "Kate is as straight and slender as a hazel twig, her hair is brown as hazelnut shells, and she herself sweeter than the kernels." So Shakespeare uses imagery to imply a lot of innuendos that are pretty subtle, He also invokes a lot of imagery from Greek gods and goddesses to really set the stage for a romance novel. So that's a role that imagery plays. Also, when Petruchio is talking about how he's going to woo Catherine, he says, "Blow on a fire and all you do is fan the flames, but a great gust of wind will blow out fire completely. I'm that great gust of wind to her fire." So in this way, Petruchio uses imagery the imagery conveys the relationship between Catherine and Petruchio and how they eventually fall in love and the dynamic in their relationship.
There. The genre of the book is a romantic comedy. It's one of Shakespeare's earliest comedies. These characteristics include lighthearted and slapstick humor, disguises and deception, and a happy ending in which most of the characters come out satisfied. A generic category that has few basic rules and operating principles, a light and humorous tone, clever language, witty banter, and causes of mistaken identity. Young love that must overcome some kind of struggle, family drama, lots of twists and turns, and multiple plots that come together in the end, which always involves the reunification of the family or a marriage. Chloe.
And that's the end.